thinking of you, only you. You in my mind, you in my heart, but still I feel that we're so far apart. Lord, I feel so empty. I need to know, because I prayed and poured on my heart. What can I do to get close? Can I get close?
Can I get close to you?
Close to you.
Can I get close?
Close to you. Closer to you. Can I get close?
Can I get close to you?
Close to you.
Can I get close?
Close to you. Closer to you. I wanna cry. I want to scream, but I don't wanna die, Jesus. Before I'm drawn close, Lord, to you, my heart is beating fast. My hands are shaking, yeah, yeah. But I'll still wait, I'll receive my faith. But I'm still eager to be drawn close. Can I get close?
Can I get close to you?
Close to you.
Can I get close?
Close to you. Closer to you. Can I get close?
Can I get close to you?
Close to you.
Can I get close?
Close to you. Closer to you.
Can I get close
Can I?
to you?
Can I?
Can I get close
Can I?
to you?
Can I?
Can I get close?
Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. to you. Can I get, can I get, can I get, oh, can I get close? This is my cry to you. Yeah, closer to you. Yeah. Can I get close? Close to you, Lord. Can I get I surrender all to you.
Good afternoon to you all. Minister in charge of the Lucea United Church, Reverend Glenroy Clark, and lay pastor Michael McIntosh, the board of elders of the Lucea United Church, the guest speaker, Mrs. Derisa Ramsey McIntosh, panel of specialists headed by Mrs. Benjamin, health promotion educator. Ladies and gentlemen, tuning in through Facebook and YouTube, I greet you profoundly. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to be the host for this our third of a series of presentations entitled COVID-19 and the Family, organized by the Family Life Ministry of the United Church of Lucea. The COVID-19 pandemic, which started in late 2019, has caused extreme havoc globally. To date, more than 167 million people contracted COVID-19 virus, with a mortality of more than 3.4 million people globally. In Jamaica, more than 47,000 people contracted COVID-19 with over 900 deaths. This became a serious cause for concern worldwide. Hence, the thought of producing a vaccine in an unprecedented timing to conquer this particular virus came into perspective. This process, ladies and gentlemen, tested the intellectual capacity of some of the most brilliant scientists globally. With this, several vaccines for COVID-19 were formulated, produced, tested, proven, and sanctioned. Of significance, a new approach to the formulation of vaccines were initiated for the first time. And I speak of the mRNA, meaning messenger ribonucleic acid, which teaches ourselves how to make a protein that triggers an immune response, which produces antibody. Tonight, we have with us as our guest presenter, Mrs. Derisa Ramsey McIntosh, to talk to us on the topic COVID-19 and the family. Vaccination, yes or no? Mrs. Derisa Ramsey McIntosh is a registered nurse. She is also a registered midwife and a public health nurse with in-depth years of experience. Presently, she is assigned to the Hanover Health Services. Mrs. Derisa Ramsey McIntosh will give us an insight and an authentic realization of COVID-19 vaccines in the simplest forms for comprehension purposes. I want you to listen carefully because a lot of persons have different views on this particular topic. And I know you will be anxious to ask questions during the presentation. However, I encourage you to post your questions in the chat. And after the presentation, some of these questions will be answered by a panel of specialists headed by Mrs. Benjamin, health promotion educator. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please help me welcome our keynote speaker, Mrs. Derisa Ramsey McIntosh.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I hope I am able to fulfill all that Mr. Anderson has so ably discussed. We will begin with a presentation on the COVID-19 vaccines. Let me get to sharing my screen with you. Okay, I'm unable to share my screen, Mr. Anderson.
Okay, no problem.
I have the presentation in a PowerPoint format. So I would love to have that up on the screen as we discuss. So we've been hearing a lot about the COVID-19 vaccines, you know, and there are some things we've been wondering about. There are a few areas that, you know, we've been hearing a lot in social media about. So we want to address that as well. The point about the myths that may be affecting us, that some of the things we're hearing about the vaccine, that it is not safe, you know, it is not effective, that steps were skipped, and that things were not done properly. So I'd love to be able to share my screen so I could have this PowerPoint displayed as we go along.
Just a minute, please. Mr. Johnson, could you assist in sharing Mrs. Ramsey's screen, please? Mrs. Ramsey, we cannot hear you. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Are you seeing my screen?
Okay, I'm hearing you now and I'm seeing the screen. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. So the beginning of this pandemic started December 2019 when we all heard about Wuhan. Never heard of that name before, but it's now commonplace in our vocabulary, where they had these strange cases of pneumonia popping up. This prompted a lockdown in China, Japan, South Korea, all those Asian countries. And the USA started to report cases closer to home. The World Health Organization later on declared a global health emergency, and deaths have been climbing ever since. Or even the Olympics was postponed. March 2020, Jamaica got our first case, and we too joined and locked down our borders. And unfortunately, the death toll for this one continues to climb. I'm not able to. Oops, sorry. So this threat began. Just a minute there. Need to go back. This wasn't moving before. Sorry about that. Going in the wrong direction. Give me a minute, please. Right. So with this threat came a lot of issues, anxiety, fear, anguish. We were, churches have been closed. Lockdowns have been happening. School is out. There's a lot of fear and anxiety. A lot of persons have lost their jobs. We have had the death of some of our own loved ones, So this has impacted us too. And then, so we need to move forward to get a handle on this crisis that we're all living in. And in the midst of this crisis, the governments over the world, health organizations, scientists, business, civil society, and in philanthropists, they joined forces to help to speed up the efforts to end this pandemic. And one of those efforts is the vaccine that we'll be talking a bit more about as we continue. And because of this collaborative effort, everyone coming together to work together to come up with a solution, then the development of the COVID-19 vaccines and treatments and tests to detect COVID-19 were fast-tracked because we had more persons sharing information, working on it together to bring an end to this pandemic that we're currently experiencing. So we see that things have been tipped in our favor where there are treatments coming out from all these collaborative efforts. Because scientists are now using methods so they can assess the risk to the health of the general population. We're being educated about the importance of adhering to these public health measures that the scientists have come up with that are able to keep us safe to a certain degree. And even mandatory quarantining that we're all experiencing. That's why we're having this meeting in this format, because we're unable to meet face to face. The isolation and lockdowns that we're all experiencing. This helps to have an impact on the treatment of this disease. You know, the main purpose of medicine is to first and foremost do no harm. So in an effort to achieve that, then we have been promoting safe and secure safety and the security of patients' well-being, right? And we endeavor to maximize all the possible benefits that we can get and to bring as little harm as possible to those to whom we care for. We also have to take into consideration the rights of individuals and groups. Because in medicine, we can't only have confidentiality, but we have to consider persons' rights. We have to ensure that whatever we are doing, we are impartial, we are being equal care and access to everyone. And in an effort to do that, they came up with a COVAX facility. We would have been hearing about that in the news, which this guaranteed that developing countries such as ours would have access to the vaccines when they became available, because we wanted equitable access for all countries. And the continued development resulted in emergency use authorization. This was granted to the current vaccines that are available now, the Pfizer, the Moderna, the AstraZeneca. These were granted emergency use authorization, and this was to facilitate the ability and availability and use of medical equipment countermeasures to include vaccines during this pandemic, this health emergency that we're all experiencing. And even before, we may have been hearing in the news where they were speaking about one particular medication that was being touted by the former president. And when it was granted use in other countries, they realized that there wasn't much difference. So that emergency authorization use was withdrawn, because after research, they realized that there wasn't much difference in the outcomes of patients. So emergency use authorization is basically giving permission to use medical products or medication to treat a serious or life-threatening illness, in this case, COVID-19. And that is what happened with the hydroxychloroquine that we were hearing a lot about in the news previously, you know? So it was not initially used for persons with COVID, but France and other countries said there were good effects from it. So it was granted emergency use in the US, but after a while it was withdrawn because there was no significant changes in the patient outcomes when they used it. So, and there are a number of other medications that have been granted emergency use that were not initial because COVID is new. So they didn't have it. We didn't have any medication set aside to be used specifically for cases of COVID-19. So we are testing out different uses of different drugs. Drugs such as remdesivir, dexamethasone, the interferons, the antibiotics like or azithromycin, medications like Tamiflu and the hydroxychloroquine that I spoke about earlier. These were granted emergency authorization use to treat persons suffering from COVID-19. So we have now come on to the development of vaccines, and vaccines became available in 2020, and they had to undergo their clinical trials where they were evaluating tens of thousands of participants, people who volunteered to take this vaccine and be monitored to see the benefits that would be derived from it if it was able to protect them from disease. And the vaccines testing and trials, they have to go through rigorous standards to pass and to be deemed as safe. All vaccines, they have to go through different phases. You may have been hearing a lot about this in the news, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials. And all the vaccines that we have available did go through all 3 stages of these trials before they were granted emergency authorization use. In phase 1 trials, they normally have a small group of people. These are normally healthy people. They don't have any illnesses or, well, none that they know about. And they test the vaccine to see how safe it is and to determine dosage that is a safe dosage that is to be used in individuals, and to see how well the vaccine works to stimulate your immune system to produce antibodies to fight off the infection. In phase 2 trials, because after phase 1, you move on to phase 2 trials. And with phase 2 trials, the doses are now tested in people, hundreds of people with various health status. So you can have persons who are diabetic, persons who are hypertensive, persons with cancer, persons with different varying illnesses. They do a wide variety of tests, different age groups, different ethnic backgrounds, the demographic groups that changes. And this is in an effort to identify any additional safety information, so you can identify things like side effects and things that would put you at risk if you do take the vaccine. They also determine the dose to be administered that is safe enough for your body to produce antibodies to protect you, and how effective the vaccines are. That is part of what happens in the phase 2 trials. And then we move on to phase 3 trials. And with the phase 3 trials, it normally involves hundreds of thousands of persons. And this is normally controlled studies, and the control meaning that they give it to a particular group, right? It's persons from different backgrounds, again, the different demographic age groups, different medical backgrounds, different social and economic backgrounds, and normally to gather how effective and how safe the vaccines are, right? And then we'll gather information about side effects, because it's a wider group of people that we're using. You'll also have a set of persons who get the vaccine and a set who don't get the vaccine, and to see how well the vaccine works, how effective it is. What we call a placebo is when they don't get the vaccine, probably something like a sterile water in the injection instead of the vaccine, and to just compare these groups. So these are a lot of what happens in our phase 3 trials. Looking at vaccine development, as Mr. Anderson mentioned earlier, he spoke a bit about the mRNA technology, which is a new technology that has come about recently. They've been using it to do trials with persons with cancers and so they tried to apply this information to vaccines. So here, the development takes 3 different parts. You have first the protein-based path, where the spike protein that's on the outside of the vaccine, that picture there of the virus, that's those spiky things on the outside there, they refer to them as spike protein. And with this protein-based part, they use the spike protein itself. It's that have it in the lab, it's purified, added with some carriers and injected into the individual for their bodies to create an immune response, to produce antibodies to protect them from this spike protein if they're exposed to it in the future. The second part, the viral vector, is where this is the same spike protein they would use, but they don't use the entire spike protein. They would use just genetic components out of it. So the gene of the spike protein is purified. It is then added to what we call an adenoviral vector and is injected. So the genes, the genetic coding from the spike protein is added to another virus, a virus that does not affect humans, doesn't impact us and cause us to be sick. So they add that virus with the genetic information from the spike protein, and that is injected into the body to sensitize it to create antibodies to fight off the infection if you do get exposed to it in the future. The third part, the mRNA, and that is the one that uses all cells have DNA and RNA, the messenger RNA, and all cells have that. And they use that genetic code from the spike protein, purify that, add it to some sugars and some fats, and then that is introduced into the body by way of the injection to cause your body to create a response, make antibodies to protect you. So this is how the vaccines are made. There are no fetal parts in it, or no DNA in it. They use the messenger coding part of the vaccine, the RNA, to cause an immune response, to stimulate your body to make an immune response. So basically, where we shortchanged with these vaccines, because they were created pretty quickly. But we see that all the steps were followed. Preclinical stage in the lab, where they had their monkeys and mice that they did their investigations on to come up with something, a vaccine that was safe and effective. So they would have tested that first, do their animal testing in the lab. This would have been followed by our phase 1 trial, where you use a small group of healthy persons to do the test on and to see how they reacted, the side effects they had. And that was done. The phase 2 trial, where they expanded it to hundreds of people into different groups, different age groups, persons with different illnesses. that was done. And we see the phase 3 trials where they did thousands of persons. That was done as well, upwards of 40,000 persons for both vaccines. But the reason why we got all these vaccines so quickly was because, if you notice, there was an overlapping of the different phases. So we didn't have the time to allow the phase to run out its complete course, but we're still monitoring those persons, still checking for any side effects, and it continues. So with the vaccines, we're going to be speaking specifically now. We have presentations on the Pfizer, the Moderna, and the AstraZeneca vaccine. So with the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, their phase 3 trial, this include over 43,000 persons. And it was found in that group to be 95% effective, beginning 28 days after the first dose, right? And it was found to be have an efficacy rate of up to 94% in the age group 65 and older. If you recall, initially they had been focusing mostly on the elderly population because they were the high-risk groups. So they were focusing more on that age group. And it consisted of a wide cross-section of persons, different age groups, different genders, different ethnic backgrounds. It was found to be well tolerated right across the different groups that they tested it on, and they had no serious safety concerns were observed. They reported most common side effect was fatigue and headaches. The Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, that has to be stored and shipped at negative 70 degrees Celsius. And they placed inside the containers a GPS thermal sensor that would be able to monitor the temperature to ensure that it was remaining at that temperature. Because if it falls out of that temperature range, then the vaccine can be damaged and then not be effective when you're administering it. So it has to be monitored to ensure that the temperature is made effective and it wouldn't work. So that's why you have to monitor the temperature. Once the vaccine is thawed out and used, because at -70 it's frozen, it can be stored for up to 5 days in a regular refrigerator under the conditions similar to what we keep our vaccines in our clinics at, between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius. And it is required that you get 2 doses, and it is given 28 days apart. But what makes up this vaccine? The active ingredient in the Pfizer vaccine is the messenger RNA. It's a modified messenger RNA vaccine that has the coding for the viral spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2. And there's some fats in there, some salts to help with preserving it, and a bit of sugar. And most of the vaccine, that's all there is, the active ingredients. All of them have the fats, the salts, some may have a bit of alcohol and the sugars in there. So, side effects. Most common side effects reported was fatigue, headache, chills, tiredness. So those were the more common side effects reported for the Pfizer vaccine. And this slide just shows the cross-section of persons that they had in their study, in the study that they were doing for the Pfizer. They had persons from different sectors of the industry, different age groups, healthcare workers. You know, they had educators, they had persons with chronic disease, they had persons working in the hospitality industry, retail, restaurants. Unfortunately, these persons can't work from home, so they were part of the high-risk group. The Moderna vaccine Their clinical trials, they did that in 30,000 persons, and it was found to be up to 95% effective. And they said that their safety profile was encouraging. The local reactions were limited, and they occurred more with the second dose than the first dose. They also reported very few serious adverse reactions, and they provided protection to the elderly. So the Moderna, it too is a messenger RNA vaccine. It is stored at -20°C, so that too has to be frozen. It is stable for up to 30 days at temperatures between 2 and 8°C. So when you open that vial, you can keep it for up to 30 days and administer doses from it. That's what it means, that it's stable. There are 2 doses are required for this one, and it's a powder that you have to mix to get a liquid into a liquid format. So it's no recon. Side effects for the Moderna vaccine. The side effects include fatigue, muscle aches, joint pain, headache, pain at the injection site, redness at the injection site as well. So these are some of the side effects of the Moderna. You may say that, oh, there's more side effects for the Moderna as compared to there are more side effects for the Moderna as compared to the Pfizer. However, these are reactions that we get similar for a lot of the vaccines that we're using today. The muscle aches, joint pains, headache that the children use. So, okay. You hear me?
Yes, yes. We're not hearing you. Can you unmute your mic, Mrs. Ramsey?
I'm going to use the cell phone. I think my internet is giving me some issues. However, the PowerPoint is going to be an issue. Because I cannot project from my cell phone. Sorry. The AstraZeneca vaccine, which is the one that we are giving in Jamaica currently. It is, it uses the viral vector technology. So that would have been the second pathway that I discussed earlier, where it uses the RNA from the spike protein, adds it to a harmless version of the common cold virus, and that does not affect humans. And then that is what is injected into us to stimulate our bodies to create an immune response. So the virus that is used is normally a virus that causes the common cold, but it is not one that affects humans. The altered virus, it cannot make us sick, but it carries a gene from the coronavirus, which is a spike protein, and this triggers an immune response. Our bodies then we become exposed. Okay, should we become exposed to this virus? Let's see if I can get back on to sharing my screen. Are you seeing the screen now, Mr. Jackson?
Not yet.
So that's the AstraZeneca vaccine. Components of the AstraZeneca vaccine, it has the recombinant replication deficient adenovirus. What that means is that it is not able to multiply in our bodies to cause us to get sick. So that is why we keep saying that the vaccine itself cannot make you get the COVID-19 disease. You cannot get sick from having the COVID-19 vaccine. Okay? It is stored at the temperatures that we can store this vaccine at is between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius, and it can be stored for at least 6 months. And 2 and 8 is our normal temperatures that we keep our vaccines at our health centers. It requires 2 doses for this vaccine to work. And the vaccine requires 2 doses, and it does not contain any preservative. After opening the vial, we have to use it within 6 hours. We cannot leave that vaccine overnight or to the next day. It has to be used on the same day within 6 hours of opening. And the vaccine, it can be stored. After this 6 hours, it has to be discarded. We have to throw it out. So if we open it for 6 persons, we have to throw out the 4 at the end of the day. So what is included in this AstraZeneca vaccine? So the adenovirus viral vector vaccine, that is there. And it has some modified kidney cells. It has some fats, magnesium, sulfate, ethanol, sucrose, sodium. There's some preservative and water for injection. What are the common side effects of the AstraZeneca vaccine? The most common side effects: pain, tenderness, warmth, redness, itching, swelling at the injection site. Might even have a little bruising. sometimes the persons may feel a bit unwell, feel tired, have chills, or feel a bit feverish. They may have some headache, nausea, joint pains, or even muscle aches. And those we consider very common. It's less than 1 in 10 persons report this side effects. We have other side effects that are reported more common, up to 1 person in every 10 reported having either fever, vomiting, flu-like symptoms, high temperature, sore throat, runny nose, cough, or chills. Some persons even report a lump at the injection site. And less common side effects, some persons may report a rash, itchy skin rash. They may report that the lymph nodes may be swollen. Like sometimes the lymph nodes under the arm may be swollen. Some report decreased appetite or feeling a bit dizzy. The vaccine trials, these span several continents. They were doing testing all over the world, in China, in Brazil, Russia, all over the world. They were doing testing on persons in England, in South Africa. We heard a lot of this on the news. Different races, different ages, because we wanted to make sure this was an effective vaccine to be administered. And the technology behind the vaccines, a lot of persons will say that the vaccines that we're accustomed to, like our MMRs and our DPTs that our children got, these, even our BCGs, these took years to make. Yes, the technology that is being used now allows for the vaccine to be developed faster. It's not as slow pace as a lot of the vaccines that were produced before. And in light of the increase in technology, why wouldn't technology be implemented in vaccine production? We are here in the comfort of our home, seeing each other, can speak to each other, almost face to face. We can see each other's facial reactions. And why can't this technology be applied to making vaccines something that it will save lives? The technology is only to be used at our convenience when we want it to work. We have applied the use of technology in the making of vaccines, and this is one of the reasons why they were produced so quickly. Imagine you're traveling from Lucea to Kingston. Back in the day, when we were using the protein-based vaccines, which is medium pace, or even using the live vaccines and weakening them to use them, that was a slower process. So it's like going up Mount Russell and Flatbridge. So you would take 3 hours to get to Kingston, or 4 hours. But now we have the highway. We're taking 2.5 hours to get to Kingston. We're still getting to Kingston, but just at a quicker pace, because we're not going up Mount Russell, come down, go through Uwarton onto Flatbridge. We have bypassed that. So we're still getting to Kingston, but we're just using the highway, which will get us there more quickly. And, I look at vaccines like that, the development of these vaccines that we're having now, because getting the virus, weakening it, so add it to proteins and sugars to make a vaccine, that's a slower place. And yes, that would take a longer time. But technology, DNA and RNA-based technology has allowed us to move faster. So we're able to get the vaccines into arms quicker and protecting our population quicker. So we see where Jamaica rolled out the vaccines, and they started with healthcare workers, right? We are the first ones to have received the vaccines. So if it was so bad, why would we have taken it first? The high-risk groups, because unfortunately our healthcare workers, our frontline workers, our porters and doctors and nurses, and we can't work from home. We have to be out there. Otherwise, you're going to come to the health facilities and there's nobody there to care for you because we're all afraid. So we got it first, the high-risk groups to include our elderly population, you know, all our frontline workers, the police officers, the JDF, the immigration officers, the soldiers, the firefighters. You know, we'll also administer it to persons at infirmaries, those in nursing homes, and even our institutionalized person, it's been offered to them. And you notice nobody's been forced. If you say no, you say no. We're not forcing anybody to take it. But the fact of the matter is, if you are in a high-risk situation, you need to look at your risk. The risk of you getting this disease because you're out there working every day on the front lines, the risk of you taking it home to somebody who is more vulnerable than you, you know, the risk of you taking it home. That's one of my big concerns. And that's one of the reasons I told my mom I was taking this because I don't want to be responsible for giving you COVID. And then I don't know what can happen to you at the end of it. So we have to all assess our risk. And these vaccines, they were tested, rigorously tested. Vaccines are tested even more than medications. You know, they are safe. And if you look at it, the benefits of getting the vaccine, the benefits far outweigh the risk. The benefits far outweigh the risk because even if you do get the vaccine after being vaccinated, the risk of you developing serious illness is significantly less, right? And we are ensuring that it's fairly distributed to persons who are out there on the front lines. We try to get to them first. So some persons may not be happy with the way it has been distributed, but we're trying to get those persons who are at highest risk to be vaccinated first. And we are hoping that when we get enough persons vaccinated so we can reach what you've been hearing, herd immunity. We need to get to at least 60% of our population vaccinated so that it can help to reduce the spread. Because if you're vaccinated, then the chances of you getting that vaccine, that virus and passing it on decreases. So that is our aim, to get things to open back up so we can all meet together, fellowship together, worship together, for schools to open, for the hotels to open up back and people to have their jobs. You know, we can go to sporting events, not watch champs on our phones. Then we need to really get as much persons vaccinated as possible to get things back to normal. And vaccines are what will help to balance that risk, to balance things out. We are hoping that the vaccines will help us to balance the scales so we can get back to doing what we love. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things you may be hearing in the media, you know, that the vaccines will change your DNA. You know, we've been hearing that one. But as I said before, they are messenger RNAs. They just instruct your cells to make the spike protein found in the coronavirus. It's instructing the cells to make that so that your body can now mount an immune response. It gets rid of all of that mRNA. When it gets into your body creates the antibodies and destroys that. So there's none of that left inside of you to cause any alteration in your DNA. All right? Once it gets the instructions, it's destroyed, and that is it. We've been hearing about the tracking device, right? And the magnets on the arms. We saw that in social media, right? Right. But tell you what, one colleague of mine said her uncle said if there's a chip in it, then nobody will be able to steal him because they'll be able to find him. But there's really no microchip in the vaccine. It will not be able to track people or gather any information about them or any personal information about them. We're just using the vaccines to protect persons against the disease. That is all. We have never used microchips in any vaccine. We use it to track the temperatures in the containers that the vaccines are being shipped in. That is all we do with the chips, to monitor the temperature. All right? We use it, we have to, when vaccines come in, they come in on a plane, or we don't make vaccines in Jamaica. So they come in from the manufacturer. We have to have their temperature reading when they get to Kingston, the manufacturer, batch number, lot number, all of these things. The same thing happens when it comes into the parish, when it comes into the health centers. We have our records that we have to keep of all the vaccines we get. That's the only tracking we do when it comes to vaccine, not on people. There's another one that they use fetal cells or fetal tissues from dead babies to develop this vaccine. No. The mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, they were not created with and do not require the use of fetal cells or any cultures to make the vaccine, right? No vaccines have been developed or tested on any aborted tissues or fetal tissues, because we've been hearing those things. Another one you may have heard is that it causes infertility, right? Cause a woman not to be able to have children. But the vaccine does not train the body to attack any protein in the placenta. There's a protein in the placenta called synthesin 1, and they say that the vaccine attacks it and causes the woman not to be able to have children. That does not happen. There have been persons who started the vaccine trials and later on were found to be pregnant. So if it is that the vaccine was causing infertility, then these women would not have been able to get pregnant while they were in the vaccine trial. So there's no truth to that. And no vaccines impact your ability to conceive. All right, another myth story that you may have been hearing about is that if you've already had COVID-19, you do not need to get the vaccine. Scientists have found that the antibodies that your body makes over time decreases. So when you get the virus itself, you become ill, you test positive for COVID, yes, your body makes antibodies naturally. But over time, your body's antibodies, the amount that is found in your blood decreases, because the way they found this out, they were asking persons to donate blood so they could get the antibodies to transfuse to other persons who were severely ill and in ICU. And that's when they realized that the natural immunity does not last very long. So you would still need to get the vaccine, even if you were diagnosed with COVID-19 before. Because over time, that natural immunity that you would get from getting the disease decreases. There are some diseases such as like a measles. You get a measles, you had measles as a child, then you would not need the vaccine. But unfortunately, this is not one of those. We do need the vaccine for the COVID. All right. Another one we've been hearing a lot about, that you can get COVID-19 from the vaccine. No, you cannot get COVID-19 from the vaccine. And this is because it does not contain the virus. Remember I said that the technology where you would get the virus and get a weakened form of it, add that to the sugars and the fats and make that into a vaccine, that would take a longer time. We have no vaccines currently that use that technology. No COVID vaccines currently that use that vaccine. It sends a message to your body to make antibodies. So we don't give you the entire virus, so you would not be able to come down with the virus itself, with COVID-19, or even to test positive with a COVID test. When you get the vaccine, there is still a chance that you can test positive because you can develop the vaccine. Remember, it is not 100% safe. It is not 100% effective. So you take the vaccine and you're still encouraged to wear your mask. You're still encouraged to do your social distancing because you could develop COVID. You could catch COVID, right? And if you catch COVID, and your body will fight it because you would have some antibodies, but the hope is that you don't get seriously ill with COVID. We are going to need hospitalization and a ventilator. It reduces the risk of serious illness when you get the vaccine, right? But no live virus was used to make the vaccine, so you cannot get the virus, COVID-19 disease, from a vaccine. And yes, we do have a few persons who have had allergic reactions to the vaccine, but there are persons have always have reactions. The majority of persons who do get reactions, it's a small number. It's really rare to have extreme allergic reactions to any vaccines. Persons who do have a history of having what we call anaphylactic reactions, severe allergic reactions, then, you know, they're encouraged not to get the vaccine. But side effects do happen. I remember one lady had an allergic reaction to cetamol. I gave her the cetamol and she had the reaction in like 5 minutes. She came back to me. And a lot of us take cetamol and think nothing of it. But then you do have persons who develop allergic reactions. It's one of those things that we can't get around. Natural immunity, it's good when you get natural immunity, but as I say, it does not last. And if you do get the virus, you're not sure how severe the illness you may have. So some persons will say that they'll rather get the disease and get their own natural immunity than taking a vaccine. But then when you get natural immunity, you're able to spread the disease to others. You get the disease, you get sick, the persons in your household, you're able to spread it to them. You know, what are their conditions? Is it that they may be adversely affected? Persons at work can get it from you. So yes, there's natural immunity, but because it's not a long-lasting immunity, it's short-lived. So, you know, why go that route, put others at risk? The COVID-19 vaccines, you know, they are safe. They will save lives. They will allow us all to be able to return back to normal as quickly as possible and allow our country and the economies, things to open up back so persons can continue on with the normal business of life, of living. So don't hesitate. Let us get vaccinated, please. We need to get our numbers up. We need to get to at least 60% so we can start seeing some easing of these restrictions that we're living under currently. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm open for questioning along with Miss Benjamin. I'm not sure if Dr. Anderson is on us yet.
Yes, Mrs. Ramsey, that was a powerful presentation. A lot of information to digest, but I realized that it was credible information, which was good. But one of the questions that was asked was a concern for allergic reaction. If one should take the vaccine, if that person has a history of allergy itself. Mrs. Benjamin or Mrs. Ramsey can go ahead with that.
Well, on the matter, as we said earlier, if you have a severe allergic reactions, then we're not encouraging you at this time to take the vaccine until we have gotten more information, on how that does happen. It's best to hold off currently. Just continue practicing your measures, the wearing of your face mask, sanitizing, keeping your social distancing. I mean, if it is that you do work on the front line, you have to do a risk assessment, with your doctor, do a risk assessment to say, and how likely are you to, if you're at high risk, you're out there on the front line, at high risk of getting this disease, then you may, along with discussions with your doctor, have the vaccine. And we do as we're part of the program of administering the vaccine all over the world. You're monitored for at least 15 minutes after the vaccine, and you're all monitored when we get the vaccines. Even us as healthcare workers, we have to sit down and do our 15 minutes as well when we get our vaccine.
Right.
And just be aware of any changes so you can act quickly, because yes, allergic reactions do happen, but if they get early treatment, then we can mitigate against it, can stop it, prevent. But have
Thank you.
the discussion with your doctor before.
Okay, thank you. Um, how long will the vaccine provides an immunity?
Currently, the vaccines that what we know about, you would it's not full immunity. So when you get the vaccines, even 2 doses, if you are not practicing the social distancing measures, wearing your hand mask, and so, it is possible that you can get COVID-19 even after getting the vaccine. But it does not result in severe disease where you're admitted and need to go on a ventilator. So it reduces the severity of the disease if you do have it. After getting the vaccine, the second dose, after 2 weeks after getting the second dose, then you have the highest protection from that point onwards. But the duration of how long it lasts, that is more the phase 4 trials. So as I said, research is ongoing. We're continuing to learn more about this. So we will give you any updates as we get them.
Can someone with going through chemotherapy or some kind of radiation therapy or something gets the vaccine?
Yes, we have given it to persons who are undergoing treatment for cancers, because the cancer does cause a weakened immune response. So, you would want to be protected from COVID as best as possible. So, yes, we do give it.
What about for pregnant women, um, breastfeeding mothers? Is it safe for them to receive the vaccine?
As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, have been persons who got pregnant while they were doing their clinical trials. However, it was not studied in pregnant women as a group, so it was not recommended for persons who are pregnant. They, unless worker and at high risk for exposure, then having the discussion with your doctor, because benefit again would outweigh the risk. We have had mothers who tested positive for COVID and were pregnant. And they even encouraged to continue breastfeeding even if you are COVID-19 positive. But have the, this they with it's not currently recommended for pregnant women and breastfeeding.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Benjamin, do you have any information?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to add, speaking from experience, I have received my vaccine. Yes, in the beginning, like anyone else, it's only natural that we would have had certain questions, certain concerns, wondering what is going to happen. Should I take it or should I not take it? But we have to be very vigilant in terms of where we get information from. Because as we have seen, there are a lot of persons who have their PhDs from WhatsApp University and social media college. And so they tend to share information that is not true, but because certain people might see them and say, yes, this must go like that. But please let us ensure that the information that we search for yourself, and let us ensure that we take information from credible sources. So the World Health Organization, PAHO, also from our own Ministry of Health and Wellness, and your local health department. So I encourage persons to get vaccinated. You might think that COVID-19 doesn't affect you, but guess what? You can contract the virus and have little to no side effects, but you can also pass it on to your loved one. And then from there, they will end up with the severe effects and even death. So prevention is better than cure. And also, I'd like to encourage persons that life goes on after COVID-19. So let us also continue to ensure that we maintain practices to keep ourselves healthy. And that includes eating properly, eating a balanced diet, ensuring that we are getting our physical activity at least 30 minutes per day is recommended for persons. And we have a lot of persons who have the sugar, the pressure, and these are the persons that are more at risk. So it's better for them to get their vaccine and have that 90% effectiveness as opposed to having no coverage. We know that it can be depressing with all the news. We realize that there has been an increase in deaths, but persons should try to find ways that they don't always focus on the negative. And sometimes you just may need to tune it out, find things to build your mental health. It's not easy because we haven't been through this before. And I'm sure a lot of people have been affected, whether it's mentally, financially. Different people have different struggles. So let us try to find things that we can boost our mental health. And exercise also is one of the ways that can help to promote better sleep, give you rest, and it can give you more energy.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions, burning questions that they would like to ask? No? All right. With this, I want to thank Mrs. Ramsey McIntosh immensely for such powerful presentation. As I said before, a lot of information, good information, you know, and it was very inspiring. Also want to thank Mrs. Benjamin for her contribution also. I want to thank the Family Life Ministry for taking the time out to organize this particular project. I want to also thank the Computer Technical Director, Mr. Kevin Johnson, a very hardworking individual. Thanks to all our participants that were able to listen to us through Facebook or WhatsApp and YouTube here and abroad. But in concluding, Bell et al. In a recent study mentioned the availability of COVID-19 vaccine that has been heralded as key to controlling the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 vaccination program success will rely on public willingness to be vaccinated. According to two scientists, Zenicher and Ming, in a recent development, a COVID-19 vaccine that could provide protection against existing and further strain of the COVID-19 coronavirus and other coronaviruses. Costs only about $1 US. A dose shown promising results in the early animal testing. And although more people are starting to really get the COVID-19 vaccine, history shows that it could take years before coronavirus cases no longer originate in the world. Team, I want to thank you. Want to thank the minister of the Lucea United Church for his initiation for the different programs within the church. And so therefore, I want you to have a good night, a wonderful night. And I am your host, Lennox Anderson Jackson. Thank you.